So I want to get to some questions here.
I just think that's funny.
No,
I
that
think
is-
it's hilarious.
That's hilarious. Malachi asked, "What's one thing, Pastor Rob, that you would have done more in your 20s and 30s?"
I'm trying to think my 20s and 30s, I was just discovering like what was going on. I didn't know. My first couple of churches, I learned a lot of things what not to do. And I would have got around more positive, life-giving environments. And I didn't know the value of a mentor. And I don't mean like an official mentor. I mean even being in a small group with a great leader or being on a team with a great leader at church. Those are things I would have done different. I read a ton and I self-educated because the high school I went to was kind of like do it at your own speed and do the PACE system. So I was a self-educator, but I didn't get around great people. I isolated. And I would have done way more small groups. I would have visited way more, like I was in ministry, so I would have visited more churches in my off time to bring back great ideas. And I would have fought to get in the room with great leaders. One thing I did for Connor and Logan, I got them into great rooms with great leaders, even just be like the helper guy. Like if they need a Starbucks, you go get it.
Yep.
If they need a tissue, you go get it. You're just here like a page almost, but you're going to get in the room around great leaders as a kid. So I would have got around great leaders, would have done that. That's probably the biggest thing. I would have got around higher level leaders earlier in my life because it wasn't until in my late 30s that I realized I got to get around great leaders if I'm going to grow.
What was the kind of big breakthrough for you where it was like, oh, now I'm around a great leader. This is a moment here, and I'm realizing I need this in my life. Now you've been around many great leaders, but was there like one initial moment of like, I can't believe God opened this door?
Yeah. Two, one local and one national. Leith Anderson. I met with him once. I said, "Can I have a lunch with you?" And
For those who don't know,
Leith was the head of the NAE, and he was the pastor of Wooddale Church. So he's going to DC, and he's got a big church in Minnesota. And so I'm just a couple hundred people, and I had dinner with him or a coffee, and I said, "Thank you so much for this." And he goes, "I see great potential in you, and I will do this again with you. We can do this once a quarter." And so to me, I'm not on his team. I don't go to his church. I'm starting another church. But I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah.
The second one was the first time I met with a group of people with John Maxwell. And at the time, our church was like 500. It's funny. Our church was 500, and I went to John Maxwell's house, and I rent a car, and I had a Dodge Neon. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have a Dodge Neon, and I'm pulling into the Country Club of the South, meeting at John Maxwell's house with all these other pastors. And I actually parked the Dodge Neon a block away and walked out because it was like a bright red Dodge Neon. I just didn't want to get mocked for driving but it's all I could afford.
Yep.
And at that day, I was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm meeting with John Maxwell right now at his house with all these other pastors. And he's given me the time of day. And he said this, he said, "Guys, Rob has a church of 500 in Minnesota. That's like having a church of 1,000 because the South is just more Bible engaged. If he's 500 in the North, it's really 1,000. Those were 2 days. Leith on a local level and John on a national level. I was like, I can't believe this.
Yeah, life-changing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. If it's okay, Logan's got a bunch of
Fire away.
questions, but I would love it if you would tell. I know a bunch of the stories of early days in ministry, and just for Processing Podcast, maybe every time you come on, you could tell one early story. But I'll just prompt you with, you've got a story about a guy named Bramble Bush. You got Leprechaun Man. You got Wolf Man. You got the older prophetic lady that said, "Watch out for this aggressive girl that's making eyes." So I don't know if you want to pick one early ministry story that, I don't know. I think it's so funny because when people look at you in the church that you've built, it's like, man, must be nice. It must be nice. But you got wild experience that people have no idea.
They have no idea. I was telling somebody the other day too, because they were looking at, our life and, I'm almost 60 and they were saying, "Oh, wow, look, you're driving this truck and you're driving that Expedition and everything."
They didn't know about the Dodge Neon.
They didn't know about that. And they didn't know that when I started, I had a Pontiac 6000 LE that I bought for $700 that didn't have air conditioning. and the windshield wiper fluid didn't even work. I had to have a bottle of windshield wiper fluid in my car. I'm the pastor of River Valley, and I'm reaching my hand out, spraying it on the window to like that's how I started. So they don't know those stories. But the St. Cloud, maybe one per time. But the first one is this. I'd only been there a week, and it was right before Easter. Just got hired. And the Easter musical was going on, and it was Good Friday during the day and then one at night. And during the day, I'm sitting there, and this lady comes up to me in the lobby. I'm brand new to the church. I hardly know anybody. And she goes, Pastor Rob, she goes, what are you going to do if a woman in this church wants you as more than her pastor? You know what I'm saying? Physically, she wants you. And I was like, I'm literally, I'm 1 week into being a youth
Just
pastor.
started.
I just started. I'm just first job. First job.
Yeah.
You know, out of Bible college. And I said, well, I would shut that down right away. I mean, like, I'm a man of God. I'm a pastor. I'm married, you know. And she goes, well, there's a woman in this church that wants you as more than her pastor. And I was like, well, I got to shut that down. I said, well, who is she? She goes, well, that woman that was in that jean jacket with the leather straps that was talking to you over there, that woman, I could see it in her eyes. She wants you. And I was like, the one with kind of the blondish, brownish, curly hair that was over there, the long jean jacket went to the floor. She goes, that's the one. She goes, she was making googly eyes at you. And she goes, I started praying against her the moment I saw her.
No.
And I was like, well, you better stop praying. And she goes, why? I said, because that's my wife. and then I said, I'm sure glad she's making googly eyes at me. I'm sure glad she wants me in those ways. You know,
Yeah,
it was just kind of like, that was the first church. And I have a dozen stories like that.
Yeah, so epic. I feel like every time you come on, you got to tell a story because those are things they don't teach you that stuff in
They
Bible
do
school.
not teach you that.